India can use flexible workplaces to encourage a high number of women to work. That was a message which came from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He also added that the labour force had a key role in realizing the dreams and aspirations of building a developed nation. Prime Minister Modi also spoke about how India can achieve its goals faster if we make use of our woman power. Now, the context of the statement is very, very important because even on 15th August, the government was very clear that the stated goal is to increase the labour force participation rate for women to 50% of the workforce. Simply put, this rate, the labour force participation rate for India, is one of the lowest in the world. It was about 25% for the year 2021, which is an improvement. Over the last many decades, just about 20% of those in the workplace are women. And this has been, by some economic standards, responsible for immense losses because we have about 50% of the population which is not getting the opportunity to add to the economy and, of course, for themselves. So Mission 2047 is to increase this to 50%. The global average, by the way, is nearly 50%. How do we do that? And is flexible workplaces going to be the answer? Is that the solution we're looking for? What more needs to be done? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Yamini, Aiyar, President of CFPR. She's joining us on the show. Sashi Kumar, MD, Indeed India, is with us on the show, as is Rituparna Chakraborty, co-founder and Executive Vice President, TeamLease. Welcome to all of you and great to speak with you on the India Development Debate today. Yamini, let me just begin with your take. First of all, the goal we've set, 50% of LFPR, where we see women by 2047. Is that feasible? And is flexible workplace one of the key missing pieces of the puzzle?
Thanks, Tamanna. This is a very important issue, and I am delighted that the Prime Minister highlighted this in his Independence Day speech and has reiterated it because particularly in the last decade or so, we have seen a significant drop of women from the workforce, which is in fact a reversal of a trend of what you see in many other countries at similar levels of GDP. And so clearly there's something more going on here, and it's not fully answered by the view that social norms, culture, etc., place restrictions on women and their ability to work. No doubt that's part of the story, but there is more. One important element of that more is about the availability of work that suit the realities and the conditions of women. And this is not about work from home, as I think is being articulated, because that's only speaking to a very small percentage of population that works in the formal economy and works in the kinds of jobs that are amenable to quote unquote work from home. It's about creating conditions in which jobs can come closer to women in ways that are suitable to women. What do I mean by that? The biggest transformation that has taken place in the Indian economy and in the way in which the labor seeks work, since particularly accelerated since growth, has been a slow, remarkably slow for how fast we have grown, transition out of agriculture into non-farm forms of employment, which is a traditional way in which economies go. We call this structural transformation. As agriculture started becoming a less critical source of subsistence employment for a growing economy, men and women started moving out of agriculture. Mechanization, of course, played a role. Men were able to find jobs outside of agriculture, but women didn't. One of the reasons why women didn't is because of the nature of work. Many women express a preference for work that is close to home, for work that allows them to do part-time work, for work that is safe for them. And agriculture, in fact, in a low growing economy, provided some of those conditions. Non-farm employment, in the way in which it is emerging, the way in which jobs are emerging, simply don't allow for these conditions. Colleagues at my center have been doing surveys of women workers, of women across both tier 2 and tier 3 cities, as well as tier 1 cities, and find that one of the big critical constraining factors is access to jobs in ways that suit women. Crucial to this is transportation and safety.
Yeah.
And here I want to say that as much as we may talk about the importance of women 50% into the workforce, and that we will create those conditions, we have to recognize that one arm of our policy is saying this and our politics is doing something completely different. Let's be clear that there is that in the moment in which these announcements are made, we also allowed convicts on a rape case, and perhaps politics judge that, to be freed. What signal does that give to women as far as safety is concerned, and creating an environment in which for them where they can go out and seek work? So just to sum up, the key here is to build infrastructure and bring jobs to women in ways that are safe.
So can we use technology to do that is the question. Rituparna,
yes, for you and me, but we are mostly an informal economy.
All right. Then let me get others also into the debate. Rituparna, the question is that can we use technology to do that beyond, like Yamini says, for you and me, beyond urban India, beyond tier 1 cities, and beyond a very small sliver of jobs? Is it more important to make sure that women who do wish to work have safe transport to that place of work?
Right. Thanks so much, Damana. Good to be here. I think a couple of years back, we did a study on gender diversity and what we can do to kind of improve labor workforce participation. And I'd like to believe that pretty much the scenario or the circumstances have not changed much since then. So let's just assume that there has been, we are pretty much at a status quo situation. But looking ahead, I think one of the things, given the topic and given what triggered today's discussion about the Prime Minister's comment on flexi time options. So one part of the survey was actually trying to gauge that what measures are actually being implemented to get more women into the workplace, whether it's on the part of the government as well as on the part of the employers, and what women really want. So there is clearly a divergence between the two. But just to talk about what women want, I think one of the primary things that the survey showed that women do want flexi time options. Women do want clear wage standards and parity. Women want transparent reviews, performance criteria. Maternity benefit plays a very important role in terms of having more women in the workforce. Of course, some of this element, one might argue that does it really apply to the informal sector, but I love to believe that yes, some of these aspects also cut across even for those who are in smaller towns, villages, maybe a bit of the informal sector as well. So we should bear that in mind, and hence I actually think that what has happened in the last 2 years, maybe because of the pandemic, has been great for women across sectors. I wouldn't just say in the cities. One thing we should bear in mind that we have seen democratization of internet, bandwidth, availability of technology, if not at the same sophisticated level that you and me experience, but there is a surge in people's usage, even in the smaller towns, villages, people who may not have access to that much of education per se. And, one of the things where I think women stand to gain a lot is the fact that they've always been. So for them to be part of the formal job market or the workforce, they also need access to the right skilling opportunities, education. We know there is a lot of discrimination. I believe technology actually is going to play a big leveler for women and across different cities and towns and villages cutting across, because now online education, distance education, thanks to NEP's push around it, it's possible. Even upskilling opportunities are possible thanks to technology. It may not be as sophisticated as somebody who is in urban India might have access, but I think there is a dramatic improvement in those access points. It's not just that. I think entrepreneurial opportunities, leveraging technology is now available to women, even in smaller villages and cities, and we should not undermine it. No, are things perfect? They are not, but I do feel that there is an emerging opportunity for women.
No, so there is an emerging opportunity for women, that's fine. I want to understand if this policy push or the stated urgency of increasing the participation of women in the workforce, is it being mirrored from the end of the employer? Because otherwise it's, all up in the air. It's very well for us to say that government wants us to do it. I want to come to Sashi on that question, that government wants to increase the number of women who are working. We should have infrastructure, we should have technology, but people should maybe get rid of their prejudices when hiring. Sashi, and that's the key question, because beyond a certain pay grade or beyond a certain level, or when there is a certain extent of responsibility, just even today, very naturally, women get dropped off as choices, isn't it?
You're completely right. And like Yamini pointed out, there is no one single silver bullet, right? This is a very multidimensional problem. You need to address many, many aspects to be able to get to that 50% magical figure. But having said that, even in places where it's safe for women to work, even in places where there is an abundance of talented women available, we see a certain thinning down of women participation in workforce as they progress to different layers of career. I think most definitely technology can help. We've done extensive studies around this. I think the bias in the recruitment process starts from defining the job and right through the recruitment process. And I think there is a huge role that technology can play in eliminating or limiting a lot of the biases that come into play in recruitment. The second question that you asked, are companies willing to address this issue? I think most definitely they are. More than ever, we are now hearing of companies wanting to make their companies a diverse workforce. And this is not driven by some moral imperative. There is a very strong business purpose there. If women are 50% of our population, they're 50% of our consumers as well. Now, unless there are enough women making decisions about how products are made, how products perform in the market, how is it sold, you're not going to get it right. So I think leave aside the moral imperative, even if you're looking at it from a perspective of business sense for companies, diversity is extremely important. And today, basis our experience, basis our conversations with companies, I think a lot of companies are very focused on making their workforce as diverse as they can.
Yamini, is there enough recognition of the specific challenges that Indian women face in remaining in the workforce? And one of the reasons why traditionally our labor participation rate for women is lesser is because socially and culturally, they bear the primary responsibility of home, kids, elderly parents, etc. Now, that's not going to change in a hurry. Do you think that workplaces need to be now more aware of it and not necessarily look at it as, a burden? Yamini.
Absolutely. There have always been what you can loosely call it social norms, cultural norms, patriarchy, and it's of course not unique to Indian society across the world. Particularly when it comes to childcare, the bulk of the responsibility tends to fall on women. I think the lack of support from male members of the household is perhaps a somewhat more of a South Asian phenomenon compared with Western countries. But the balance of burden often rests on women across the world, and that has always created its own limitations. You're absolutely right that employers need to be a lot more sensitive to this and create a much safer environment. Even in my own personal experience, I hesitated to tell my employer when I was pregnant for the first time with my first child about being pregnant, because we just managed to score a big grant that I was to be responsible for. And the fact that my employer was completely relaxed about it and in fact gave me a salary rise the week that I went on maternity leave made me feel very confident that I could manage and balance all of this out. But I think we also have to to make a distinction, perhaps, between work and careers, in the sense that there is absolutely no question that the employer has to create comfortable conditions for all employees to be able to play on a level playing field. But success in careers do require degrees of trade-offs. And those are trade-offs that, all working parents go through, and perhaps working mothers go through even more. And it's a constant, at the sort of higher end of a career track, a constant balancing act. And some years you step off and some years you come back. So in the white collar working world, agility is important, and employers need to be sensitized to this agility. I think increased presence of women in senior positions, it's still slow to the take, but it's happening slowly and carefully. Over time, this may change. I see the difference between my boss's generations and my generation, and then the younger people that are coming in to the workplace, at least when it comes to white collar urban jobs. You see a lot more diversity, and I think that will help to generate an environment of sensitization. Certain kinds of workplace behavior that were completely acceptable even until a decade ago are now no longer, and we are, as employers, having to take critical things like sexual harassment in the workplace very, very seriously.
Right.
So these are very positive steps that are being taken moving forward. But there is also this larger question of, as a society, what do we value? Where do we see productivity? Do we see productivity in how you perform in the labor force, or do we see productivity in a more holistic imagination of well-being? And I think if we think about it like that, then many of the debates on can women have it all or not have it all will take a different turn.
Yep. The point that Yamini made about her own experience, and Yamini, I think you were blessed to have a great boss at that point.
I was just lucky. Yeah, I know.
No, but I want to talk about it from the policy perspective, Rituparna, because when India became one of the few countries to grant 6 months maternity leave, it was hailed around the world. But there was also a section of people who said that this is going to make it even tougher to hire women. Because that as a company you're saddled with that expenditure. Do you think that it's time to take a more holistic view to something like this? And India has been at the forefront of this policy, which is a great thing. Do you think companies now have gotten used to it, are more on board?
First and foremost, I do think we need to spend some time at a public policy level to kind of assess where we stand on the Maternity Benefit Act and its impact on women. Whether women do need 6 months of maternity break leave, I think enough and more studies, the United Nations actually have suggested that it's essential, given that mothers need to breastfeed their child for about 6 months. But the question is, India also is the only country where 100% of the burden of the maternity benefit of the break is on the employer, which essentially is restrictive for women. And it does, in some cases, come in the way of onboarding all women. Look, let's leave aside sectors like healthcare and pharma, maybe BFSI, maybe ITES sector. But then if you look at the other cross-section of industries, which are more traditional in nature, it is something which is impending and which is actually, impacting the decisions of many hiring managers, even today. Yes, a lot of organizations, and especially listed companies, larger organizations, I've seen that they have, of course, made peace with the Maternity Benefit Act. But then India is a land of MSMEs, SMEs, startups, and the works, many traditional sectors. So yes, it is something which is still a problem. It is a burden. It's a fact which is now probably not being spoken, and we don't articulate this issue so much, and people like to remain quiet about it. But it does need a relook in terms of how to make it more palatable. Thankfully, Labour Code has made some suggestions in terms of how maybe the law can come into the rescue. But again, the limit is right now, women up to 50,000 can avail benefits under ESIC, under the maternity benefit scheme. However, I don't think it's fair to bring in a salary bracket for something like this. And hence, I do urge, and I think in my conversations with the government, I keep reiterating that this does need some element of relook. where 100% of the burden should not come onto the employers. So yes, this will have impact. Maybe it's already having, we don't know. But if we have the aspiration of taking women workforce participation from 125 million to 250 million, we do need some drastic moves around how. And yes, I do agree, just the flexi option is probably not adequate or enough for us to hit the 250 million mark.
Yeah. Sashi, your sort of final concluding thoughts on this, and that maternity benefit which Rituparna is speaking about is something which is a huge raging policy debate even now. Though I would say that it's one of the best things that the government has done, very clearly putting it out there. Do you think that companies are ready to take the next step in terms of inclusion of women, but not only in a piecemeal way, not as a box to tick, but in a meaningful way?
I think companies are definitely more they have this reason to be more diverse and inclusive, and many companies are driving towards that. It's not just about metrics today. I think a lot of companies and a lot of people in management are focused on making this a real policy imperative across teams and across levels. So we are seeing a big push from corporate India towards a more diverse workforce. Having said that, just want to sort of connect this back to this point of flexibility and work from home. We recently did a survey. We spoke to about 500 employees and 15,000 employees, and of all the all the women that we spoke to, 62% said they would prefer some sort of work from home arrangement, and 28% said they would prefer a hybrid mode of working, and about 10% said they favor coming into office very regularly.
Interesting data.
While I completely agree that flexibility and work from home is not the only solution, but this definitely can help.
It helps.
And today, both employers and job seekers are open to providing more flexibility. So
all right, let's hope for the best. Let's hope this number increases and improves year on year. Just by the way, a recent study shows that it's a World Economic Forum study for 2021 on the Global Gender Gap Report shows that it'll take 136 years globally to close the gap between participation of men and women. Think about that. That's the size of the challenge we face. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the debate today.
Thank you so much.